There are many different ways to create a build concept, from gear to attributes to talents, and it all needs to work in harmony with your master blueprint. Now, since Title Update 5 has turned skill builds into viable options for agents to use in combat, I thought it would be a good idea for us to take a look at possible gear and weapon talents you should look to loot or craft for Title Update 5 for the skill build user. What's going on, everyone? It's LtBuzzLitebeer back with another Division 2 video, and like I said, we are going to take a quick look at gear and weapon talents that could pair well with a skill build concept. And when I say skill build, I don't want you to think that all I'm thinking of is activating your skills and hiding behind cover, although that is certainly a possibility for your build, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. No, I am also speaking to those of you out there like me that like to create hybrid skill builds that allow players to fire their weapons and do damage against targets in addition to activating their skills. So with that, let's jump right into the obvious gear talents, starting off with the passive utility gear talents, which include capacitive, destructive, empowered, and skill haste. In general, I do not recommend that you look for gear with capacitive, as you could make such better use of a passive talent on your gear. 20% skill duration could help out a little bit if you're going for a skill duration build and are trying to squeeze every drop of duration out of your build, but in general, the percentage that you gain from having capacitive on your build is not worth it. In addition, the actual mods you equip onto your skills will have much higher duration percentages than capacitive, therefore freeing you up for better gear talent choices. What can I say about destructive that you don't already know? 20% explosives damage is a favorite of players running with skill builds built around making things go boom. Destructive can be found on every gear piece, and if you can have it equipped 6 times along with the explosive perks you obtain for equipping the demolitionist specialization, well, let's just say that it creates a lot of damage. Empowered grants 10% skill power, and I can understand why agents might want to equip this gear talent, but overall, the 10% skill power increase is small in comparison to what you can obtain through the skill power attribute roles. I would only recommend Empowered if you were trying for a decent balance of weapon and skill DPS and need that little extra skill power on your build to unlock better skill mods. Skill haste at 20% is not a bad option as a gear talent, although at that percentage it is lower than many of the gear pieces an agent can loot, assuming that those gear pieces are each at max percentage. In addition, skill haste mods can be looted and equipped for your individual skills that will grant you far more haste than 20%, but if you are going for a max cooldown skill build, you could always experiment with this talent. Next, let's take a look at some of the active utility gear talents, which include Calculated, Creeping Death, Skilled, Tech Support, and Terminate. In general, active utility talents are found on every gear piece except the holster, with Filler Up being the only active utility talent on the holster, so look for these talents on most gear pieces. Calculated is a no-brainer when it comes to any skill build concept, as a talent that gives you a flat 10% skill cooldown just for getting a kill from cover is a solid gear choice. Creeping Death is a talent I know that many agents pass on, but for those of you that want to create a skill build built around status effects like bleed, blind, or on fire, this might be a gear talent you should look into. We had versions of this in Div 1, like on the 6-piece classified Predmark builds where the bleed had a chance to pass to nearby targets. So if you spec heavily into status effects, a chance for it to spread to nearby targets could prove useful. Skilled is a great talent to have for any skill build platform, as a possible 25% skill cooldown reduction just for having your skills produce a kill is a strong gain. Now, this percentage gain is not a static gain, so there is always a chance that it will not proc, leaving you with no rewarded buff, but in general, Skilled is a strong skill build gear talent selection. Tech Support grants 25% skill damage for 10 seconds if your active skills produce a kill, and in my mind, this is a must-have on any skill build. Now for a player using 2 damage skills, you could deploy your first, let it accumulate a kill, then deploy your second damage skill with that 25% damage buff, taking your damage from strong to devastating. And finally, we have arrived at Terminate, a skill build skill not every agent is familiar with, but should be. At a 35% skill damage gain, Terminate is the strongest gear talent in terms of raw damage gain towards skill damage. Now, all that is needed to proc the Terminate skill damage buff is for you to deplete an enemy's armor, so this will not work on regular NPCs, and if you are not producing enough damage with your weapon, this could prove pointless against elite and named NPCs, so experiment with this talent. Now, you could pair it with a wild Chem launcher build built to destroy enemy armor through the corrosive talents, and once it has destroyed their armor, then deploy your secondary damage skill to take advantage of the 35% skill damage. Now, to round out the gear talents skill build agents should consider, I would like to throw in a few talents that might not be on your radar, but should. These talents include Compensated, On the Ropes, Payload, Spotter, and Wicked. For those of you with low critical hit chance percentages and are going for a more rounded skill build concept, Compensated should be on your list of gear talents to check out. Now, if you can keep your offensive attributes count under 3, which is no easy task, and your critical hit chance percentage under 20%, you will gain 15% weapon damage, which falls into place as slightly more than the max roll on your backpack and just slightly less than max roll on your chest piece. Paired with a high base damage weapon like an LMG or rifle, this talent could bring up your weapon DPS to a level on par with your skill damage. On the Ropes has gotten a bad rep through it being abused by DZ agents running a Nemesis build built around dumping skills and then receiving the 25% weapon damage increase, but for a true skill build user, it is a great weapon damage talent. If you don't have high levels of skill haste on your build or are using skills that require longer cooldowns, having On the Ropes there to increase your weapon damage by 25% so you can defend your position while your skills cool down is a solid gear talent selection. If you are running a skill build predicated on explosives damage, Payload should be one of the gear talents at the top of your list. This talent awards 50% explosives damage for 15 seconds for destroying an enemy asset, like the Black Tusk tanks and doggos, just to name a few. Payload can only be found on the chest piece and will require that you have 4 or less defensive attributes, but other than that, you are not required to meet any other gear or attribute standards. Payload paired with a Seeker Mine destructive demolitionist build can produce some absolutely sick explosive numbers. Found only on the mask and requiring 5 or more utility attributes, Spotter is a solid selection for those of you using the Pulse skill in combo with your skill build. Plus 20% weapon damage versus pulse targets is a very strong damage increase, and if you were to spec into duration and or range with this gear talent, you could keep targets pulsed for longer periods of time, therefore keeping your weapon damage increase active for longer periods of time. In addition, you will become best friends with your squad mates as soon as they see you firing off your pulse to increase their damage gains as well. Although agents consider Wicked an offensive gear attribute, it pairs nicely with status effect skill builds. Plus 10% weapon damage to status affected enemies is not a bad damage gain and could work nicely with agents using fire turrets or firefly drones to place enemies under a status effect. Now, there are more status effect skills you could pair with Wicked, but you get the point. The longer you can keep targets under the status effect, the longer you will receive the active 10% weapon damage bonus. Alright, so we've covered some obvious and some not so obvious skill build gear talents you should consider, so now I would like to jump over to weapon talents and run down that list in similar fashion, starting off with the status effects of Eyeless, Ignited, and Sadist. These 3 weapon talents are found on every weapon archetype and have no requirements for unlock. Each one of these weapon talents only require you to place the target under the correct status effect to proc the 20% weapon damage bonus. Now, if you were going for a status effect skill build, I would always recommend duration and range for your skill mods if available. Paired with a high base damage weapon like an LMG or rifle, these damage gains can really add punch to your weapon DPS. Optimist is always a solid weapon talent selection for skill build users, as it is available on all weapon archetypes and only requires that you use 5 or less offensive attributes on your build. Receiving incremental weapon damage increases for the percentage of rounds left in your magazine is a solid weapon talent to have on any build, especially for those of you that like to fire your weapon while having your skills deployed. Spike, like Terminate on your gear talents, awards plus 35% skill damage, but increases the buff to 20 seconds and requires the agent to first obtain a kill through a headshot. Available for all weapon types and requiring 5 or more utility attributes, Spike pairs well with builds built for headshot damage or using precision high base damage weaponry like rifles and marksman rifles. Spike only requires that the killing blow be a headshot, so in theory, an agent could spam body shots to get a target low, then aim for the head for the kill shot. Release your damage skills and watch the ensuing destruction happen before your eyes. Available only on LMGs, a weapon talent that I would recommend for skill builds, Unhinged grants a flat plus 20% weapon damage at the expense of 25% weapon handling. Now, this weapon talent used to grant even higher weapon damage increases, but has since been reduced for balance reasons. Many weapon damage talents are predicated on achieving certain types of kills or are on a timer, so a flat 20% weapon damage gain is simply too good to pass up if you are using an LMG with your skill build and plan on firing your weapon in combination with your skills. Vindictive is a weapon talent that could help out your squad in certain circumstances if you can kill an enemy under a status effect. Now, this weapon talent requires you to use 4 or less offensive attributes and will only grant the 20% critical hit chance bonus to group members within 15 meters, but if used properly, can add much needed critical hit chance bonuses to you and your squad mates. The important factor to remember when using Vindictive is to stay within the correct critical strike range to your targets. For example, if you and your squad are hanging back and using long-range weaponry to down targets, Vindictive, even when procced, will award no bonuses to your squad mates due to the long distance to target range. To round out this discussion, let me briefly cover the handling and equipped weapon talents I would recommend to pair with your skill build, starting off with Allegro. I have long stated that Allegro was hands down the best handling weapon talent, and my thoughts on this talent have never changed. More RPM means increased DPS, plain and simple. If you plan on firing your weapon in combination with your skills, look to loot or recalibrate Allegro onto your weapon and enjoy the free damage gains through the increased RPMs. For the equipped weapon talents, it's really quite simple in terms of selections, as you should be looking for weaponry with either In Rhythm, Recharged, or Rooted as your third weapon talent. In Rhythm provides a 5% chance to completely refresh your active skill cooldowns, and I have heard rumors that this skill procs more often than one would think, considering the lore text of just a 5% chance every 60 seconds. Recharged grants a strong 25% increase to skill duration, ammo, and charges when deployed at full armor, so as long as you can click that activation button on full armor, you receive this skill bonus. And finally, we have reached the final talent on this list, with that being Rooted. Just for entering cover, your agent gains a 25% skill damage and healing increase for 10 seconds, with the buff being lost once you leave cover and with the buff only available to proc once every 60 seconds. Still, if you can enter cover, receive the proc, and activate your damage skills, the 25% gain is quite good. Well, there you have it, agents, every gear and weapon talent that I would recommend that you look to try out in Title Update 5, and hopefully you found a few surprises on this list. As always, I look forward to reading your thoughts in the comments section below. If you could take the time to rate the video with either a thumbs up or down, it would be appreciated. While you are here, it would be extremely helpful for my channel's growth if you could smash that sub button, and make sure to click on the bell icon to receive all notifications for when I post content to YouTube. In addition, you can follow me on Twitter for all my latest thoughts, questions, and comments concerning gaming, and look for me over on Twitch with weekly streams. Until my next video, this is LtBuzzLitebeer, signing off.